So, welcome. As you know, this topic is how do we ensure children learn the most from play in family daycare? And I'm really excited to have here today Marilyn Fleer, who everybody tells me is the absolute expert about child and early education and care settings. Welcome, Marilyn.
Oh, thank you, Lisa, for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Can you tell me a bit about yourself? Why are you the expert in play?
Why am I the expert in play? Well, I am so lucky because I work in a conceptual play lab. I have this great play lab and a team of people, and we have this amazing government funding to support us to really explore play and learn more about it, and to support early childhood educators to embrace it and develop it. And so I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world to have this work. And so this work comes from the Australian Research Council, and it's a laureate fellowship that has created the conditions for this and this lucky space for me.
Am I right in thinking you started off as an educator yourself before you became an academic?
Absolutely. I began my life as an early childhood educator and just loved it. I had many family and friends say, do this, do that, like it always is. But no, for me, working with young children and being in an early childhood education has to be the best ever profession.
Okay, so tell me, what exactly is play?
Well, play has been talked about in so many different ways, and just about everything a person does or a child does has been classified as play except sleep. But the way I think about it and the work that we do is that it's about creating an imaginary situation. And in the imaginary situation, you can change the meaning of things. You imagine yourself being the pilot or the scientist or whatever character you want to be. So play captures this imaginary situation, and you become transformed into another place, into another character, into another time even. It's really exciting play because it's all about imagination.
So why is it so important then? Like, how do children learn from it? Or just why is it so important? I can understand it. It's fun. Yeah, I've watched children. They have fun when they play. I have fun when I play. But why is it so important?
Well, it's really important for a number of reasons. One really key reason is that when you imagine, you're able to explore things that might not exist there in the moment. So therefore you become really skilled at thinking abstractly, where you need that kind of capacity when you're at school or when you're thinking about something that you can't see. So in COVID-19 times, we know that, we tell children to wash their hands, but there's something invisible, a virus, that you can't actually see. And so they have to imagine it. So play and imaginary play builds children's capacity to imagine things that they can't see. And it also means that when later on they're dealing with concepts that support their learning, which most of them are all about imagining something that you can't see, they already have these beautifully developed skills to be able to do that. So it's really important for children's thinking and learning, but it's also important for their social and emotional development. As we know, children have to negotiate in play, they have to enter the play, they have to work out how, to keep others playing along the lines that they want to play. And so they can't just do anything they want, because their play partners will just say, oh, I'm not playing with you. So they have to really work hard to keep that together. So that develops their social skills, and it also develops their self-regulation skills and their emotions, because they can imagine all sorts of emotions. So they can be in the doctor's surgery, being frightened about the injection in their play, but really having a great time playing. So they're all exploring all these different emotions, and that's important. But self-regulation is important too. We know that really matters in school, when you have to, sit and do what you're told most of the day in some traditional environments. And so for children in play, they can't, as I said, they can't just do anything they like, but what they have to do is sort of control themselves a little bit. They can't just take everything and use it. They have to actually do this, you know, holding back and knowing that if they're kind to that person, or they let them have that resource and they don't take it themselves, that, you know, that self-regulation, that self-control is really, really important. And we know it really matters for school learning later as well. So there's so many things about play and why it's so important.
Did I see you playing earlier? Did you have a duck in your hand earlier? Did I imagine?
Oh, you were imagining already. So here we have the imaginary situation, the duck, yes, and the baby duck. And so that's part of the imaginary situation that we can find ourselves in with children when we see them playing. Absolutely.
That looks like fun. So how can family daycare educators plan for play? How can they plan for, you know, the development of play?
Well, one of the really important things is to think about play as something that we specifically plan for, because often people say, oh, we just let them play. Well, we know as family daycarers that it actually really matters. As educators, it really matters. Our planning really matters, because then we can be really purposeful about children's the development of their play. And one way to do that is to observe children first, to see what it is that they're interested in, how they're negotiating in play, how they're using or creating imaginary situations. And so we can observe first, but we can also create imaginary situations. So now we bring the duck and we have our little duck, and we can create a beautiful imaginary situation with children. So we plan what we want to do. One of the things we do in our play lab is that we start with stories. So we take children's favourite books, for instance, and we use it as a kind of a stimulus to expand, because we go beyond reading the stories, and of course there's lots and lots of chapters in here, but what we do is we start to, so this is the classic tale of Beatrix Potter, and of course, you know, the tales of Peter Rabbit are fairly dominant there. But what we do is we can plan these imaginary situations. So we can plan the Mr. McGregor's garden, and we can have Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail come in as the special spies to keep an eye out for when Mr. McGregor's coming. So we can plan these kinds of little scenarios with children, and then be in role with them, acting out. You know, as an adult, we can be one of the characters in the story, and or we can even introduce a character. It doesn't mean it has to be that character, or the children can introduce a new character as well. So it's this idea of planning an imaginary situation, perhaps around a book, or around taking children's interest, because we've been observing them. But then the third part is to then think about how we've looked at and we've observed the children, we've played with the children, and then reflect on it. So critically reflecting on, how did that go? So how do we go? What do we do next? So what's the next adventure that we can use? So do we choose another story, or do we take the same story and Cottontail becomes the scientist, because she knows about companion planting, and she's the one that can actually organise a very nice information session for the rest of the rabbits, and so, you know, introducing some additional content. So these are just examples of what you can actually do in terms of planning for children's play.
One of the things that's hard for family daycare, well, I don't know if it's hard, but I'm imagining it would be hard in setting up children's play, is that you can have that multi-ages within the one setting. You can have, you know, a 6-week-old baby and, you know, maybe an 11 or 12-year-old after school. How can children play across ages? How can you encourage that?
I just love the fact that family daycare has multi-age groups, because that's the best place to develop children's play, because we often think, oh, we're just letting the children play and we don't have we don't have a much of an influence on what's going on. But in fact, when you've got all of these different age groups, then we can involve them in the play and support the play develop over time. So for example, we can have a special hat for one of the children that's a storyteller hat, who becomes the narrator, who tells the story about what's going on in Peter Rabbit's life. And there might be that one of the other participants of the play in the family daycare group, so the toddler's walking around and uses an object such as this. You know, I'm sure family daycare is very familiar with these kinds of objects, and so the younger children can transform this beautiful toy into a character in the play, so that when they're ringing the bell, then they're signalling that they want to be in the play with the other children. So, or you can actually be holding the baby, and you in character, because you've put on a special coat and you're now Mr. McGregor, and this is Mr. McGregor's assistant, the little baby. So the baby's incorporated, obviously not in the same way as the other children, but the baby's there, and the baby feels the wind, feels the different characters. Then there'll be lots of little finger puppets, no doubt, that the children could be holding and being like a character in the story to expand it, so they all have something in their hand to take it further. But the little baby, you know, can be interacting with the object in this way. So these are all examples of how. And then you have the older children, of course, and so the older children, of course, need to add something more complex to the story, to the play plot. So they might say, well, I'm actually the scientist, and I can actually give you some information on this. So when you come to visit me, my fee is not very much, but here is some information about gardens and so on. And so the older children can take more of an authoritative role. But at other times, you know, they can wear the storytelling hat, and they can actually provide more of the complexity to the play. So, you know, you when you've got these multi-age groups, a play is really exciting, because the younger ones watch what the older ones are doing, and they want to be like that. And so, you know, of course, they're going to be really attentive and participate in a very active way, because they want to wear the hat too.
So what should an educator do before play, during play, and after play?
So before play, really do that kind of observation work where they're really looking closely at what's going on, and use that information to plan their play. So to be thinking about how they would set up an imaginary situation. So for example, they might decide that as part of the planning, that they will introduce something such as, and I'm sure family daycarers are very familiar with this kind of device, this kind of prop, can create a really interesting imaginary situation that could be like the shed for Mr. McGregor's garden. And so the planning could be about what you might introduce, what you might set up, but the planning could also be about what character you will take and how you will work with that multi-age group. So what items, objects you're going to bring along to support the younger ones to be actively playing together with the older ones, and what kind of planning you might want to have a look at what's already available. So it's very easy for them to find a YouTube clip, although children are very capable, so they'll probably teach us, and they'll say, yes, I know about that already. There's a lovely website on. So that, and then the third is this critical reflection about, well, what took place, and what did I learn from my observation and participation in the play that I can then take forward for the next day. What, you know, maybe I need to introduce a letter or a special storytelling bag, or a surprise that might come out of the bag. And, you know, it could be the duck comes out of the bag, and the duck's going to visit the garden, and it's just a very hungry duck, and gobbles up not just the snails, but actually starts eating everything. And it's Peter Rabbit that gets the blame, you know. So you're starting to set up little interesting scenarios in the play, but the children will do that too. Once you start to plan a few of these little problems, these little ways of stimulating play, then the children will start to do it as well. They'll introduce more complexity to it as well. So it's really these three things: is observing, planning, being in the play, and then reflecting.
I can imagine for some educators that would be really easy, but I'm also sure, like, I know some educators that are really dramatic thinkers and are actually, you know, should really be on the stage as much as they should be educators. But others are that isn't their natural inclination. How do the ones that look at this and think, I don't have the imagination to even think up these kind of things that Marilyn's talking about, much less do them, how can they, learn or...
Sure. So we have on our website a whole lot of fantastic resources that can give creative ideas. So we have what we call pop-up play world starters. And so for books like this one, or other kinds of stories like Rosie's Walk, Possum in the House, all these lovely books that that children cherish and we as adults love reading. What we have is lots of these ideas about how you can set up these imaginary situations and how you can introduce these interesting problems. And they're just downloadable, free, available. We also have on an app which you can download for free, and it's got video clips of other educators actually creating these imaginary situations and developing children's play through story. And so that's the resource side of it. But in terms of how you feel as an actor in this process, baby steps. So if you're feeling a little nervous, just start with reading the story and then start to introduce the characters of the story and say to the children, we read the story, let's just see if we can create a little mini play world of this. And the children, and then you can invite the children to say, oh, I'd like to be the rabbit, or I'd like to be Mr. McGregor, or I'd like to be the scientist, or whoever it might be. And you can as an educator, then if you're feeling a little bit anxious to be dramatic, then of course you can just use little props yourself. So you can use the hat to signal that you're a certain character, or you can even use a mask. And then over time, you won't need that. You'll just see how magical it is that these children just love the fact that you're a character in the story. And even if you feel that you are hopeless at it, children won't. They'll just go, oh, that's so wonderful, you're a rabbit. And all you're doing is going, they'll just love it. They'll just love it. And that motivates you and keeps you feeling like you can move forward. But you can do funny little things, even just like get fun glasses and put those on and just start the process so they know that you're having a go. So I'm just have a go, just try a little bit, baby steps. And then the story is great because you just start with that and you just be the characters. And then as the story evolves and new things happen, or new adventures, that the rabbits go on new adventures, then you might just do the adventures in the book, but then you create your own adventures. You have your adventures about how to get the dishwasher emptied and the washing done, because the rabbits are on a mission to do those things before they get their carrots. So, you can create a few little funny scenarios like that, so that the imaginary situation moves into all the different parts of the house where you've got all these other things you have to do as well.
And that's important, because family daycare educators don't always have time to just play. They do have to do the cleaning. They do have to do the paperwork. They do have to, change the baby's nappies. And so, having a way to make those experiences playful as well is important.
Absolutely. And I think...
Oh, sorry, I tried to read your book today. It's a very big book, but I started to read it. And one concept interested me. You said that the more complex play occurs when children have more content and more concepts. So more complexity when they have more content and more concepts. Can you explain what you mean by that?
It's such a great question, because when you have a group of children together, so we start with a multi-age group of children, when they themselves carry the play, there'll be certain levels of complexity of play, and the oldest child usually, not always, but usually is the driver, and usually whatever they know and can do is what the others rise up to. So, but if the older child is at one level only, if you want to add the complexity, of course, that's when you as an adult are in the play with them, because you can then pick the moments to add something to it to make the play more complex, like, you know, the knock at the door because, you know, somebody's just you know, in role, somebody's just come to the door and wants some information about how to manage rabbits because there's a rabbit problem in the region, you know. So you can kind of add complexity, but you can also, like we were saying about the older child going and having a look at YouTube, you can add some content, because the more children know. So if children are role playing about Peter Rabbit, and they're and following all the adventures of Flopsy and Mopsy, then if they know more about rabbits, then they'll know more about being able to expand their play. So another example would be, there's a lovely story of Possum in the house, and and I've lost my possum, but there's a possum here somewhere, and that's of course what happens in the story. The possum is all over the house, and it shouldn't be in the house. And in that story of Possum in the house, you can go at the very simple level, which is to role play it, but when you add extra to it, so, you know, if we want to catch the possum and relocate it, we actually have to know about possums. So what do we know about possums? So if we don't know anything about possums, we can't actually role play that. But if we know that we've got to be at night time looking for possums, because, you know, that's when they're active, then, you know, we can all be pretending it's dark and we've got our flashlights, and so you start to add more complexity. But then what do possums eat? Well, we don't know about that. So we have to learn about what possums eat, because if we want to lure them into a trap, because we're going to catch them, then we want to lure them in with something yummy. But if it's not what they like eating, they're not going to come into the trap. So we have to learn a little bit. But by learning about those things, then the children are playing those things, so that they take the, you know, their trap, and they find their food that they're going to lure them in to it, and their play becomes more complex. And then when you leave these props out, as we can do, then the children can actually keep developing the play. And that's when, of course, you know, we could be folding up the tea towels or whatever that we need to do, watching how the play's evolving, and then we can kind of interact with them and add a bit more to it, and just say, oh, I just saw a scientist with a big plaque saying, I know all about whatever it is that they're really interested in. So you can, and they'll all look, because there's nothing to see, but of course they'll be in the imaginary situation, and they'll all be looking, and then you can say, what was it that, oh, nocturnal. Now that's an interesting word. Wonder what nocturnal is. And so you start to introduce some content, and of course, before you know it, the children are all going nocturnal, because we know they love saying dinosaur words, so why can't they say nocturnal? So it's this idea that the play creates the imaginary situation, and then we feed the imaginary situation by growing it. We're adding the fertilizer, we're adding the water, we're giving the sunshine to it, and it grows, and the play grows. And of course, the children's thinking is constantly expanding. They're building their imagination, and they're just going to fly in any situation when they've got that capacity. It's just so exciting.
I'm sure that people who are watching this video are remembering, as I'm doing, some of their experiences as play as a child. What about you? What was your favourite play experience when you were a child?
Well, this is it. You're absolutely right. Everyone has a play memory, and my play memory was when it's a bit funny that I've chosen this book, because there is a link. My memory was growing up on a farm. So I grew up in a very small community in Victoria, in the Gippsland area. And in that area, one day my family bought a fridge freezer with great excitement, because they were all focused on that. So of course, it comes in this big box, doesn't it? So the box got out the door while they were fiddling around getting this installed, and this box, you know, this was magic for me. Into the box, I was a rabbit. I wasn't Peter Rabbit, but I was a rabbit, because on the farm there were lots of rabbits, and, you know, there are lots of activities around rabbits, including catching them and eating them and having ferrets to find them, and so on and so forth. So rabbits was really important. So pretending to be a rabbit was magical for me. And I think this play memory, if we each think about our play memory, there is something very emotional and connected there in terms of that, how you feel. this stays with you. So this is something really, really important about play that's totally undervalued and perhaps not spoken about enough. But if we all tap into that play memory, it tells you how powerful play is, because, you know, I'm not a young spring chicken anymore, and I still go back into that imaginary moment and remember how it felt. But there was a lot of emotions, a lot of imagining, a lot of, you know, reliving my life on the farm, and also expanding. I was on my own in this scenario, but I was expanding my thinking at the time. And had I had a family daycare and work with me, I'm sure they would have been suggesting this beautiful book be read to me and expand my view of rabbits and understandings about rabbits and how they live and so on in a different way. But yeah, that's my memory. And I'm sure all your...
It sounds wonderful. Tell me about conceptual play worlds. What on earth are conceptual play worlds?
Oh, I'm just delighted to tell you about conceptual play worlds, because on our website...
You would be.
Well, a conceptual play world is this is what's coming out of our research. It's a model that supports educators to plan for play. And we love it because we see that it's a really, really good tool. And on our website, we have proformas that you can download and lots of other resources to support you with it. But it's 5 characteristics. It's really very simple, but very powerful. And the first one is choosing a great story, you know, one that's full of drama, one that's got lots of adventures, or ones that has the potential, like Rosie's Walk has the potential for many adventures, because the fox chases Rosie in that story. But there could be all sorts of other adventures that Rosie goes on when Rosie decides to visit the neighbouring community. So you can start with a simple story and expand it. So choosing a really engaging story to create an imaginary situation. So then that's the first characteristic. The second characteristic is that what we do is we create that imaginary, we plan for creating a space of some kind, an imaginary situation. So that could be like I had before, using something like this to create a particular space that would become the imaginary situation. So this is the hen house, and every time I put this up, it's going to be the hen house, and we go in and we role play being Rosie the hen, for instance, or it could be the shed in Mr. McGregor's garden, and we're role playing the story there. So it's kind of like a prop to signal that that's a space. So it doesn't have to be very complex, or it could be just it could be a special room, or it could be footprints, or it could be a special bag that when the bag is dropped, magic happens and we all go into character. So that's creating this imaginary space. But then to think about how we enter in, because we all want to be a character in the play. So going back to what we were talking about before, we might wear hats, we might have objects to take in because that's the character who we are. So we're transitioning into the play. And but then in this imaginary situation are problems that arise and they have to be solved. So we set up some kind of problem. It could be a letter arrives, a message on the phone from the fox in Rosie's Walk, or from Mr. McGregor leaving a message that says, "Stay out of my garden, I'm going to catch you otherwise," or something. And so you and then you create this drama, and then you say, well, we've got to have a plan of how to make sure we know when Mr. McGregor's coming. So that's when Flopsy and Mopsy create a special plan of how they're going to watch an escape route if you know. And so this sets up really interesting problems that the children can role play and solve. And then the last characteristic is actually the role we take as educators to be inside the play with the children, and how we, in a multi-age group, we hold the baby and they participate, or we give a prop to the toddler. So we're thinking about how to involve all the different children as play partners in this, including ourselves. So, you know, what role are you, and you don't have to have the same role each time, but you're thinking about and planning for what you might do. And of course you can change it at any moment, but it's this 5 characteristics. And when those 5 characteristics are planned and executed, then you have this exciting imaginary situation that can go in all sorts of directions.
And
And
if
that's a
people
conceptual
want,
play world.
if people want to find out more about conceptual play worlds, how can they do that?
Oh, well, we would love to have family day carers come and express interest in our special VIP program for family day carers who want to learn about a conceptual play world. If we can find enough people to come together, we'll set up a time and we'll, as a Zoom, so you can be anywhere. And I have my fantastic team, and what we're going to do is have this professional development, free professional development, where you would have the opportunity to have our team actually take it like we've been playing around with today, take a story, read the story, do some role playing with the children. So it would be you with the children, and we'd step you through day by day these 5 characteristics. And so by the end of the 5th day, of course, you know, it would be a 30-minute segment or whatever was appropriate at the time for your group of children that you're working with, that we would have done a play world in that week, like a pop-up play world for the week for you. And then we hope to have a conversation with you about what worked, how can we do it better, how can we tell others about it, and you can help us as part of being involved in our play lab in this way, because we can help others then take this further forward for family.
Would that work even for educators that had different children throughout the week, or does it need a consistent group of children?
No, not at all. It can be different because then you build it in, you plan it, so that if, you know, taking the props again, you can use a prop to signal that, you know, day 1 these 3 children were involved, but day 2 one of the children takes the hat and says, I'm the magic musician and I'm going to tell you all about what we did yesterday. So just imagine, you know, for the older child, imagine this imaginary situation. So that's one technique. The other technique, which works well, is you just reread the story, or you do a quick version of it, because you all you have to do is just basically open up one page and have that and actually tell the story just from the picture, and you just do it as a quick version, and you can ask certain children to help you narrate it. So you can invite whoever was Cottontail can say, I did this, whatever it might be. So Cottontail helps with the story, you know, I did the little plan, or whatever it might be. And so so that then it orients all the children, and then the new children are part of that imaginary situation. So I don't think it'll matter at all. And then the next day, when the others, when the children have missed out, say, what happened? What did you do yesterday? We were there Monday, but now it's Wednesday. What happened? And so you can revisit. You can say, oh, we'll tell you about that. It's special, you know. And so you just add it into, yeah. So no, it's not necessary to have exactly the same children.
Okay, so I'll give the website and contact details for you where people can get involved with that. But just tell me one more thing. If you wanted to if you had, you know, just 1 minute to tell educators something about play, like it might be why play is important or what they can do for play, what would that be? What's the thing that you really want people to understand about play?
What's absolutely critical about play is that you as the adult, as the educator, are part of the children's imaginary situation, and that you help from inside the imaginary situation to grow this imaginary play world with them. And that, to me, is the most important thing. Imagination, and you in the imagination with the children.